We're here today at the Victor Verster prison compound, and this is the house where Nelson Mandela spent the very last year of his captivity. He spent, I think, 25 years in Robben Island or so. Then he moved on to another huge prison here, and then finally they took him to this house, which is like a very normal 1970s bungalow. It has a little garden, but actually he was still very much a prisoner.
Sweetheart, the sun has set.
Being here is extraordinary for me. I have such a connection to the anti-apartheid movement, to the notion that racism and apartheid, I understood it to be an abominable thing. It was such a strong system. It took a great deal of effort and struggle for people to actually come to the point where it was broken finally.
Demonstrations against the South African government's strict apartheid policies.
And Nelson Mandela was regarded as one of the main drivers of that movement. His life was mainly sacrificed in prison because, he spent 28 years of his life incarcerated. 1988, there was a massive concert held in Wembley Stadium
against the cruel, unjust system of apartheid.
50,000 people were in the stadium. The message at the time was, "Free Nelson Mandela." To be part of a collective message with other musicians focusing a lens, not only on Mandela, but everything he was standing for, a non-racist world. It was very emotional. It was very strong, it was very powerful. It helped towards the tipping point.
I am now in a position to announce that Mr. Nelson Mandela will be released at the Victor Verster prison.
Every camera from around the world was here.
There's Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man taking his first steps into a new South Africa.
No one had seen Mandela. They had pictures of him as a young, healthy man, a boxer, freedom fighter, but they hadn't seen him. He was an older man by this point. But the electricity, the excitement was extraordinary in terms of what Mandela would describe as hope against despair. I came to South Africa for the first time in 2003. I was invited to perform for the launch of Mandela's HIV/AIDS Foundation, which was called 46664 after his prison number. Through the late 90s, Southern Africa was experiencing the worst rate of HIV/AIDS transmission in the world. The country had just gone through everything with apartheid, and all of a sudden, this invisible virus strikes the population and is killing people at the rate of almost 1,000 people a day. There's a lot of stigma around HIV. There's a lot of silence and denial because people feel so ashamed to talk about their status if they know that they're HIV positive. Because it's a sexually transmitted disease, it was not in the front headlines of the newspaper. So when Mandela spoke about HIV and AIDS, it was so impactful and said there's a genocide taking place in my country.
AIDS is no longer just a disease. It is a human rights issue.
Meeting Mandela, it's very hard to describe in a way. I mean, to meet a man that is so exceptional like that, who is a person, a human being. We hear about people that are very rare that really do extraordinary things. Mandela said he would lay his life down for this movement of anti-apartheid, and he meant it. He really walked his talk. And to meet an individual who truly follows through is humbling and inspiring, and it left something indelible with me. I look on him as a human being. I don't look at him as someone who has no flaws, but I think the values that he endorsed and the fact that he led this country without creating a civil war, which so easily could have happened here.
Enough is enough.
I did have opportunities to sit with him in his home and to have a conversation. That day was his birthday and the telephone rang and he said, FW? FW de Klerk was calling him to wish him a happy birthday. And we were just sitting sort of like, whoa. So it was completely surreal, but sort of wonderful at the same time. And he said, "Oh, I think we have done a good thing for South Africa." I'm sure Nelson Mandela was not a perfect human being, but what he stood for was something that we need to always keep a reminder of, some kind of human value. These are the things that I love about him. Walking your talk.